All right. So, hey, what's going on, Scouts and Scouters? We've got Roger Neal on the line with me. We're practicing social distancing. Roger is in an undisclosed safe location. And so Roger and I are going to talk about cyber safety with a lot of units participating and still meeting through social media and through Zoom go-to-meeting platforms. Roger, thanks so much. What kind of advice do you have for our Scouts and Scouters that are doing this right now?
I'm working off my tablet. So Microsoft 10 and a tablet.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, I'm working off of my Surface right now, so it works just as well as using a desktop or a computer. Now, all of our trained leaders should be current on youth protection. So what does youth protection guidelines say, or do they say anything about virtual meetings and in general online interaction with our Scouts?
Well, Rick, I'll cover that in just a second, but let's start with a safety moment on cyber safety. And there are a number of safety moments on the health and safety website for scouting, and there has been one now for several years on cyber safety. So since all of us are spending more time using digital media, whether it's for education, research, that's how a lot of people are staying connected, socializing. Safe guidelines are very important, and so nationally, the Scouts have formed a partnership with a group called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And they're a training expert for many law enforcement agencies and youth groups. And so this is the resource that we're using from the scouting standpoint. But certainly some of the things that are important on that, and we'll talk about these more in a few minutes, I'm sure, but the basic precautions about not clicking on links in emails if you don't know or recognize the sender, not opening attachments, keeping personal information out of your communications is so important in this day and age. And probably the last one is, paying attention to website URLs, and many of them look similar to what you may see, but if you don't recognize that or you're wary, the option is best is to not open it and then use your phone to call that organization to see if they were reaching out to you. So that's our safety moment for tonight's roundtable.
Hey, so Roger, when you talk about personal information, like when I send emails, I often include my email address and phone number in my signature. So what kind of personal information are you talking about in terms of that our Scouts and volunteers should be protecting?
Well, I often do the same, but it depends on whom I'm sending that email to. So if it's someone that I know or have an association with in scouting that I want to make sure they have my phone number, I will do that. But the real personal information are things like your address, any bank information, social security numbers, and it even goes down to people posting on Facebook and other mediums like, well, here's a picture of us and we're currently at such and such location. And then the bad folks know that nobody may be home and it's at Target, or leaving messages. So the personal information, I'm comfortable with phones, numbers, if you know the person that's receiving your communication. Otherwise, I would not put anything else regarding my personal life in that message.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And if I do include my phone number, it's from somebody that I've corresponded with before, or somebody who might need to contact me or call me directly. So yeah, absolutely.
And interestingly, Rick, on the cyber safety sheet, which I'll hold up here for a second, I know people won't be able to read it, but on that safety moment sheet, right down in the middle on the bold items, it says, do not give out personal information over the phone or in an email, and you're completely sure of who you are giving it to. And so that would be the advice that I would recommend for all of our scouters and scouts.
I agree. Very good. So we got that started. Now, I don't know if you've seen Roger, but I see on social media, because I follow several scouting forums, I've seen hundreds of pictures of scouts sitting at a computer during their scouting meetings, doing it through Zoom or GoToMeeting or some other virtual platform. And with this social distancing, it seems like a lot of people are doing that. I mean, you and I are several miles apart right now, but we're still holding this little talk. So what do you have in terms for kind of safety in mind for safety with this distance for our scouts?
Well, and interestingly, the scouting wire that I received today has quite a few articles on this very subject. Um, One of the keys, of course, is having a secure link and site and software package, whatever you're using. And, we're seeing that with, in fact, the method that we're using today with Zoom. And as Rick and I talk about these things, if we mention a name, we're not endorsing that product. We're just saying what we're using. But there's been a lot of cases of what's now being called Zoom bombing. And instead of someone photo bombing you, they're Zoom bombing, and they're linking in, especially if they're not invited into a discussion. They're linking in and displaying pornographic material, inappropriate material, racist materials, and that type of thing. It seems like it's happening generally when the host has not limited the invitees. So one of the recommendations I would have is that whatever social media the scouts are using or scouters are using, the host needs to be clearly monitoring that. And if anything jumps in that they're not familiar with or don't anticipate, cut the link right now and reestablish the meeting in a few minutes. So that would be one thing that I would recommend. Secondly, you mentioned youth protection. And everyone needs to remember that communications using social media are the same as any other communications in scouting. In other words, no one-on-one communications. So a scout master should not be reaching out to only the senior patrol leader. The scout master should be either reaching out to the whole patrol leaders council, or include another adult on that communication. But again, just like anything else we do in scouting, one-on-one connections, one-on-one communications is not allowed, and that's another issue that we all need to be aware of. And I think the third is, and we could talk about this in a couple of minutes, the scout law and gives us some great guidance of how to behave ourselves when we're online.
Right, absolutely. And it's funny because as we sit here, Roger, I'm looking at my participants list here for my Zoom, and I'm monitoring it because I have heard of that, people jumping in without being invited. And right now I see just you and me in here.
But as host, if all of a sudden something appeared that you didn't expect, and that was the case, then you have the ability and should just terminate the connection and the virtual meeting and go on. So very important in this day and age that the bad guys have figured out a new way of invading our own personal lives, and everybody's using these methods right now every day, and so we just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, and I'm actually going to talk with Nicole about this later, one thing that I see a lot of are troops and merit badge counselors holding merit badge training classes through Zoom, which it's nice to see that even though we can't be physically together right now, we're still engaging in that scouting mission.
Yeah, very definitely. But again, just like if I am a merit badge counselor, I should never have one scout in my home or be with that one scout while doing the merit badge counseling. There always needs to be more two deep leadership, and there should be, maybe we get 2 or 3 scouts that want to do the same merit badge, even better. But just the same principles apply. We're just using technology instead of face-to-face meetings, but everything else from youth protection still applies.
Right, absolutely. Now, you mentioned emailing as Scoutmaster Rick can't email a single scout by himself. Now, I've actually had scouts email me without including a parent or another adult leader in the email traffic. What should I do with that? Now, I'll tell you, I know what I've done in the past, but for those of us who don't normally encounter that, what should we do with that information?
Well, what have you done in the past?
Honestly, I've completely ignored it until I saw the scout in person again and with another leader said, hey, send this email, include your parents in that email traffic, or I'm not going to acknowledge that email.
Right. That certainly is one strategy, but you could do the same thing electronically. You could reply back to that scout and include the scout's parent, guardian, which are acceptable, another scout leader, and make that same comment in writing in the email, which really does build a trail that you're following the youth protection guidelines. And so that you could do it both ways, but whichever you're comfortable with. The important thing is you're not engaging in a conversation with that individual scout. I think the other thing you could do is perhaps that scout raised a question. Well, again, you could answer that question, in my opinion, as long as you included someone else, like the parent or an assistant scout leader, in your correspondence back to that individual. And again, it's also a great time to do some education and reinforce with them politely that please don't reach out to me singly. Please include your parent, your scout leader, whomever is appropriate in your communications with me.
Absolutely. What other tips, words of advice do you have for our scouts and scouters to go right now, moving forward until we're able to start meeting in person again?
Well, a couple of thoughts that I have, and one is I'm going to encourage all unit leaders and all of our youth members to get the cyber chip. And the cyber chip is a series of specific requirements, and they are specific to grade. So it starts at grade 1 and goes through grade 12, depending on what those are. That's a free service, and would really recommend that all scouts and scout leaders get the cyber chip, and they can just go onto the scouting website and scouting.org and look for the cyber web chip. That gives a lot of guidance, and it's going to help protect the individuals, whether they're adults or youth. So that, and by the way, that cyber chip, much like a totem chip or a whittling chip or some of the other chips that we have in scouting, is good for 2 years and then needs to be renewed if the scout wants to have it. So that's something that every scout could do right now at home without the unit meeting. And so that would be one thing that I would recommend. Secondly, especially if it's on training, making sure that we're following the syllabuses and the training guidelines. And if it's an advancement situation, let's say the advancement requirement is to demonstrate how to bandage an injured hand. Well, I guess you could do that electronically as long as the leaders, and that was plural, can see that. But really, this medium works out best for explaining and those types of things. The hands-on how to demonstrate stuff, depending on what it is, you may be able to do at home and via the computer remotely. But some of that things, it's going to be pretty tough to demonstrate how to light a campfire on social media. But people are creative, and they may be able to do that. So again, I strongly suggest the cyber chip. And there's also a resource in scouting. It's called the Scout Law and Cyber Safety and Cyber Bullying. And again, this has been out for many years. But what I like about it is that it uses the Scout Law as guideline.
Okay, and I can definitely I can dig up those links, and I'll put those onto the screen as we put this up for our viewers to see. That way they can see those links as well. What other resources are there out there for our volunteers to reference for this digital online safety?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I think one of the resources that most of our volunteers have that is not scouting resource is information from their internet provider that talks about how they set up a good secure password on their router at home. And having good strong passwords on the routers certainly helps reduce the potential of someone hacking into the call and doing bad things. So that's a non-scouting resource that I would recommend.
Okay, perfect. Hey, Roger, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. Hopefully you are staying safe and staying healthy. Is there anything you'd like to add before we break to our next topic?
No, I appreciate the time, Rick, and again, I think these are good resources that Scouting has, and people should realize that Scouting's been on top of this situation for several years. We're not just doing a knee-jerk reaction because of the distancing. So good resources, follow the same principles, whether you're a merit badge counselor or working with a den, doesn't matter. The two deep leadership, following that, and you know what, for especially us older folks that may not be as socially media savvy as some folks like you are, uh, be flexible and look at it. And again, the Scouting Wire messages that I got today had some great examples in them of what units are doing around the country, and patrol leaders councils are getting very creative. An idea came out yesterday that I saw was have a social meeting or movie night together where everybody's seeing the same movie independently at their homes using social media. So I think that be creative and use the tool to its best advantage, and it is so important. We know, and the psychologists will tell us, that young people are very affected by what's going on, and they pick up on the stresses at home. They may not voice anything, but they pick up on those things. So using these tools that we've been talking about is so important to keep the young people connected, which is going to be vital for their long-term health and welfare.
Awesome. Hey, Roger, thank you very much for your time. Roger Neal from our Council Safety Committee. Hey, I'm sure you and I are going to talk again very soon, Roger. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for what you do. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Roger. Take care.